is when I notice something that seems strange, is I look into it. I say, what's going on here? Am I crazy? Did I notice something that other people notice? Well, what's the deal? And one of the things that I think is odd is I have made a lot of submissions to PSA and I've never gotten a half grade, ever. The only half graded cards I have are cards that I bought that have half grades. And when I made submissions to SGC, I'd say a third to half of my cards get half grades. Now, I've said this before, but the difference between a low 7 and a high 7 is like the difference between a C minus and a C plus. It could be quite a bit different. So then I started looking into it. How prevalent are half grades with PSA? How frequent are they with SGC? How does it affect the values? And I think it's something to take note of. So I really believe that the you know unappreciated grade is the half grade, regardless of what half grade it is. Now I know, buy the card, not the grade. I get that. But when you're buying a card or you get a card graded that you have the intention to sell, the grade will affect the card's value, even if the card is still the same card, regardless of the number at the top. So the grade does matter. And half grades matter. So if half grades matter, and SGC and PSA are by far the two most popular vintage card graders, then taking a closer look at this, I think, is worth the time. And I took a much closer look at it. Check this out. Tell me what you think about it. Give me some feedback on it. But the half grade, it's something we need to pay attention to.
All right, so we have to go back to where did this all start? So PSA started doing half grades in 2008. All right. And SGC, they started doing half grades a little while after that in 2012. So when they started grading cards, they originally were not doing it this way. SGC had that 100-point scale, which calculated down to things, but the actual half grades came later. So we recently took a look at 10 cards from the 1950s in an analysis that I did comparing different grades, different cards over a period of time. But when we look here, we're going to go back through those 10 cards, but this time we're going to look at the population specifically, the half grade population. So for the 1950 Bob Feller card, you can see the population there of half grades. And when you calculate out the number of half grades compared to the number of total grades, that card has only gotten a half grade 11.7% of the time. So it's pretty rare to get a half grade. Now we'll compare that to SGC. These are all the half grades highlighted there for you. And SGC has given this particular same card a half grade 23.3% of the time. So right off the bat, SGC is about twice as likely from PSA to give a half grade. So let's look at the 51 Warren Spahn. 8.7% of the time, PSA has given that card a half grade. That means 91.3% of the time it gets a flat, rounded grade. But SGC, 28.1% of the time. So we're talking about 3.5 times more likely SGC would give it a half grade than PSA. Now right there should be a little bit eye-opening. So let's look at a 52 Eddie Matthews. Now there's not a ton of those out there. It's a high number, tough card, his rookie card. And we look at the half grades there, and 13.1% of the time, PSA has given that card a half grade. And SGC, you'll see they have not graded that card all that many times, but the percentage, the frequency, that when they've graded it, they've given it a half grade over 25% of the time. Now, this might seem redundant for a minute, but it matters. Trust me, hang in there. This matters. This is important. So if we look at the 53 Topps Whitey Ford, out of all the times it's been graded, PSA has given it a half grade just 13% of the time. So now 87% of the time, it's gotten a flat grade. It seems like the half grade, which has been around for quite a while now, should be somewhere between 25 to 50% of the time. I understand they've had a lot of them graded before they started doing half grades, but a lot of them graded since then. SGC, who started doing half grades after PSA, 25.3% of their Whitey Fords have a half grade. Now again, we're going to zip through all of these cards here, and it's just going to take a second, but it is an important point to make. So the 54 Ernie Banks, his rookie card, 13.4% of the time that it has been graded by PSA, it has gotten a half grade. SGC, you'll see here, 28.8% of the time, more than twice as often, more than twice the frequency of PSA. So why isn't SGC giving less half grades like PSA? Or why isn't PSA giving more half grades like SGC? So the Willie Mays 1955, 10.9% of the time that it has been graded has gotten a half grade. But look at SGC, 28.5%, almost 3 times as frequent. SGC will give it a half grade than PSA. Now, the reason I'm going over so many cards is to show you this is just not a phenomenon for one card or 2 cards. This is pretty common that PSA doesn't like giving half grades. And you'll say, well, if you look in their rules as to when they give half grades, no, sorry. 7.8% of the time for a 1956 Ted Williams is not enough. There's too big of a difference from one grade to the next, condition-wise and value-wise, to not be giving it more. Over 30% of the time, that card has gotten a half grade from SGC. So we're talking like 4 times as likely. Now look at the 57 Sandy Koufax, just 5.4% of the time. Versus SGC is 30%. So more than 5 times as likely to give it a half grade for SGC than PSA. Now, when we know there is, from time to time, quite a jump from one grade to the next, value-wise and condition-wise, getting a half grade or not a half grade can be a lot of money, which you're going to see here in just a second. Hang in there. So the 58 Yogi Berra, 7.2% of the time, really? 7.2% of the time it's gotten a half grade from PSA. Now look at SGC. Again, way more frequent. 30% of the time. More than 4 times that of the frequency of PSA. And the Yogi Berra card is not an expensive card. So most of the 58 Yogi Berras that have been graded have been in the not too distant past. It's not like a card like the Bob Gibson, where those were getting graded years ago because those have always been fairly valuable. So PSA is 8.5% of the Bob Gibsons have gotten half grades. Again, versus SGC, which is significantly more frequent, 31%. This is not just an anomaly of one card or 1 year or one manufacturer. PSA, on average, of those 10 cards, gives less than 10% of the time a half grade. But SGC is over 22%. It is well over twice as likely that SGC would give a half grade than PSA. And now you say, well, who cares? It's not that big of a deal. Half grade or a full grade. No, it's a big deal. So check this out. So we're going back through the cards and we're looking at the 2022 average sale price. Again, this data was pulled recently and I did a video on it comparing year over year increases. And the difference between a 2 and a 2.5 of the Bob Feller from 2022 is 145%. I mean, that one might be a little bit of a freak because the 2.5 actually sold for more than the 3 average. So you go, okay, that's just that one time. But look down here at the 52 Eddie Matthews. That's a significantly higher selling price. Now, there is an occasion that it sells for less. Now, why would it ever sell for less? Well, for one, I think a lot of people on their search criteria on eBay, for example, they just search for a 3 or a 4 or a 5. They don't search for a 3.5 or a 2.5. Or when they check the boxes on the filters, they check for the 3s, not the 3.5s. So now let's look at these 3 cards. And look at that one. Look at how much more a half grade is fetching than the regular full grade. So we're talking about a serious increase in value for that half grade. Because if you think about it, a 7.5 in theory is better than every 7 that exists. So it should be a lot more valuable than the 7s, right? I mean, in theory. So we got this Ted Williams, 96% more valuable in a 6.5 than a 6. Because in theory, the 6.5 should be better than every single 6 in existence. So it makes sense it should be quite a bit more. Not as much as the 7, as you can see. But it's 96% more than the regular 6 score. So we look at the Yogi Bear, and there's not much difference. Again, it's a lower end, value card. It's not invaluable, but it's not a super valuable card. But look at the Bob Gibson. Look at the huge jump with the half grade. So when we're not getting half grades, when we're just getting full grades, that is a serious deficit from your value, from your pocketbook. It's a problem. Half grades, on average, of all of those cards, all those 10 cards, the average half grade increased the value by 40% over the half grade below it. Now, does that mean you should go to PSA and complain? Maybe. Does it mean you should use SGC instead of PSA because they're more likely to give a half grade? Maybe. But half grades matter. And they don't seem to matter to PSA. But they certainly matter to SGC. And as far as the value of the cards, if you're getting your cards graded, it makes a big difference. Leave a comment. Tell me what you think of this. I think it's interesting. What do you think?